What is Harris's biggest accomplishment to date as vice president?
I don't know. I don't feel comfortable doing this anymore.
She was
vice president.
she was a very good vice president.
That's an interesting question. Getting to vice president.
I have to do more research on her, honestly. I'm just glad to see a woman of color in charge for once. That's it.
I haven't followed her political career that closely.
That's a good one. I don't know. Yeah.
I don't want to do that.
It's been months, and Kamala Harris has still yet to do a single interview. And listen, it's not like we're expecting her to sit down for 5 hours straight like Trump does. No. I mean 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. But we got zero, zilch, nada. The election is in a couple of months. And one of the people running for president has yet to do a single interview with the media. And she's been getting called out about it. But don't get me wrong, it's people like me calling her out. It's people like you who will be in my comment section below. And there's some independent journalists, and there's people who are calling her out, but the mainstream media is not calling her out. The mainstream media, they should be the main ones invested in talking to Kamala Harris. Yet they're acting as if everything's okay. They create and generate all of this hype behind her, but it's like none of them are excited to talk to her. And it's starting to get kind of weird. It's starting to get kind of weird, and I think the pressure was starting to build up because, surely we can't go all the way until the election without this woman talking to somebody. So finally, she's agreed to do an interview with CNN. Home field advantage. CNN is going to take it easy on her. But she's agreed to do a pre-recorded, scripted interview. Now, usually when you hear from Trump, 9 times out of 10, it's live. And they want to catch him saying something. They want to catch him flubbering some words. They want to try to make him look bad any way they can. But Trump, he nails most of his interviews. Kamala Harris, it's going to be scripted. She's going to know all of the questions beforehand. And they're trying to use this now like, what are you going to say about Kamala now? She's sitting down to do an interview with CNN. What can you say now? Well, guess what, folks? After a couple of days after making this announcement, Kamala is already backtracking on that interview. She got cold feet. She got scared. Her campaign, no matter how hard they try to train her, they realize that she does not do well in interviews, which is why she hasn't done any interviews. So now, instead of having a one-on-one sit-down with CNN, Kamala Harris is bringing Tim Walz along like an emotional support dog to help her in this interview because she cannot do it alone. Now, they want you to believe that this woman can handle being president, but she can't even handle sitting down and getting asked softball questions by the same media outlets that are working overtime to get her elected. Her sitting down with CNN is like sitting down with friends. But, it's getting so bad that even CNN has to somewhat pretend like they're calling this stuff out, or else they'll just lose too much credit and the media doesn't have much credit left. So it's gotten so bad that even some of the people they're bringing on CNN, they have to admit like, hey, this is kind of weak. This makes Kamala look weak. Not only have we waited months to get an interview with this woman, but we finally get an interview and then a few days later they want to restructure things and make it to where we don't really get to have that one-on-one sit down. But let's go ahead and listen to what they were saying on CNN about Kamala Harris and this decision.
Is the line now going to be, well, why isn't she doing it by herself?
Yeah, I do think people are going to bring that up. Like, I have great confidence in Dana and CNN to do this. I think it's incredibly weak sauce to show up with your running mate. The fact that they don't have enough confidence in her to let her sit herself, the actual top of the ticket, and do a single interview. In fact, I think the hand-wringing and the gyrations over this over the last month show a troubling lack of confidence in her political ability, which also makes you wonder as a voter, well, what kind of president would you be if this kind of a small-time decision, can we do an interview or not, what does that look like for your decision-making process, so on? So, yes, I think Republicans are going to think it's pretty weak to show up with effectively someone to take up half the time.
So even the fake news media, they're like, hey, there's only so much we can do to try to make you look good. You can't keep hiding from the interviews. And here we are. We had this chance to prove everyone wrong, that you're competent and confident enough to do this interview, and then you change at the last minute, and now you got to bring Tim Walz along, and you make CNN look bad, you make yourself look bad, and she's really making it almost impossible for CNN and MSNBC and these other outlets to run damage control for her. But an unexpected person actually weighed in on this, a guy by the name of Edward Snowden. If you do not know who Edward Snowden is, I suggest that you go do some research, okay? He's someone that you should know about, especially if you're watching channels like this one. But here's what he had to say. So Mark Knoller says, should CNN have insisted on a one-on-one interview with Harris and turned down a joint interview with Harris and Walz? Too tough to walk away from, but first question to Harris ought to be, why should or couldn't you appear solo? And Edward Snowden, quote, replies and says this, that Harris feels incapable of surviving a basic solo interview after nearly 4 years at the pinnacle of power in the White House, even with a channel that deeply favors her party, is a problem. A vice president shouldn't need training wheels Walz ready to jump on her grenade. So he's calling Tim Walz training wheel Walz. And to make no mistake about it, that's why he's there. For every blunder, for everything Kamala Harris gets wrong, when the going gets tough, and the tough ain't even going to get going on CNN, let's be real. But the moment they hit her with, the softest of questions, Tim Walz is going to be there to protect her. And in many ways, this goes against what the Democratic Party is about. Aren't we supposed to be about, are the Democratic Party, they're supposed to be about, strong, independent women? So Kamala Harris isn't strong and independent enough to do an independent interview? You know what I mean? So you got to bring Tim Walz, you got to bring a guy along to save the day. That's the way I look at it. I don't know how you could look at it any other way, but yeah. This shows you how big of a problem this is. How can someone who is literally the vice president right now, and that's something, I don't know, it's a detail that people kind of forget. You would think that would be one of the number one details on the top of everyone's mind, but for some reason I can tell you for a fact that it's not. But you have this woman who's one of the most powerful people in America, the second in command when it comes to running this country, who's been in the White House for 4 years, who is now running for president, and she cannot sit down for a 15-minute interview with CNN. That's kind of scary. And that goes beyond politics. I believe that at the very least, each party should put up someone competent enough to do an interview. I don't care if I don't agree with what the Democrats say in the interview, at least be capable of doing so. Kamala Harris isn't. She's proven that time and time again. And I know that, we live in this world where there's a lot of things going on, but you can't lose sight of the fact that the election is coming up really quickly. These days are going by fast. Every day without a Kamala Harris interview is a step closer, an inch closer to the election, an election where people are going to vote literally without hearing Kamala Harris say anything. Okay? And I believe that Kamala Harris will get more votes without saying anything than she will if she says a lot or if she says anything at all. And that's why they're trying to keep her quiet. And I'm telling you folks, before you know it, this election's going to creep up. People will already be voting and we will have not heard from this woman at all. And that's the way they're trying to keep it So we got to keep applying pressure because pressure busts pipes, and Kamala, she's ready to bust. But I want you all to bust your thoughts down in the comments below. While you're down there, hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe, ring that notification bell. And if you find yourself getting too worked up by all of this, remember, it's just political cinema.